This is a reading from the notebooks by Marie Valtorta. I'm going to read about 12 days worth of entries because they were all very short, from May the 1st till May the 12th. May the 1st. I see and immediately recognize my Saint Francis of Assisi. I see him twice. The first time in the morning, he is standing in his poor cowl, not brown, but grey-brown, like the feathers of a wild turtle-dove. He is barefoot, with his head uncovered, and already with the stigmata. I clearly see the wounds in the palms of his thin hands. He is standing with his arms bent at the elbow and held close to his body, with his hands at shoulder level, like a priest when he says, "The Lord be with you." I thus see the wounds in his palms distinctly. He is looking at me with compassionate gentleness. He does not speak. The second time, in the evening, he comes back, and I see him even better. His face is so gaunt that it looks almost triangular. His hair, trimmed in a circle, forms a slight wavy line, grizzled in its light chestnut brown, on the high, very pale brow. He has light brown eyes, sad and good, deeply sunken in his sockets, a long, thin nose, very pale, slender cheeks, lengthened by a sparse beard, trimmed into a point. He is smiling, but without joy, a smile seeking only to encourage. He speaks, slowly, in a clearly intoned voice, but as if weary. Signaling with his wounded hand, he asks, "Do you like my olive trees?" "No," I answer, "and yet I like them so much because they reminded me of our Lord Jesus in his prayer." This is Luke chapter 22, verses 39 to 46. "You, Father, saw Jesus in their midst. I no longer see anything, and they bring me only sadness. Strive, daughter, to find peace and joy in them." I said so, and I suffered so much then, for I too was disillusioned with men, and I would say with God's approval of my work, "Blessed are those who do God's will, and for his sake face every tribulation." Try to reach this painful blessedness. It is the stigmatization of the spirit, and it is more painful than this one. Do you see? Which opens my flesh. I know, but try, weep and try. I too suffered so much, and for so many reasons. I too experienced fondness. I too was full of longing. I too felt the prayer I had offered in certain hours falling back upon me. I endured hours in which I was only able to moan. I know what your pain is. But I say to you, strive to find peace and joy in all the pain. Afterwards joy and peace come. Be good. I will stay close to you. I bless you with my blessing. May the Lord have mercy on you, turn his face towards you, and grant you peace. May he give you his blessing. It is not much, but it is already a glimmer of heaven which comes to me. I had never seen or heard the saint, whom, if you recall, I greatly venerate, and I was astonished. He came to console me a little in this desolation. May the 2nd. The seraphic one had calmed me a bit. A letter arrived from Father Migliorini, who, by wanting to demand the impossible from a being, pushed this being back into the depths of the storm. I realized that theories are the shield which rises up and conceals the reality, and the union and the assonance between two spirits. Those who, through the goodness of God, who has given them an organism devoid of nervous energy and impulses, and so forth, have thus settled readily into the niche of "that's the way it is, and that's the way it must be," cannot at all understand those who have quite different springs on their device, and vibrate at even slight touches. At rough touches they vibrate to the point of breaking. What suffices for Tom is of no use for Harry. Rather, it is a source of greater pain, danger, excitation, and rebellion for Harry. One must not anchor oneself to theory, Father, as if to a buoy. One must weigh anchor and introduce oneself into the same sea in which the little ship of a soul, caught in the whirlpool of a severity which breaks it, finds itself tossed about and dismasted, and understand what the painful disillusionment coming after its trusting love, which felt so certain of God's favor towards a request which no one can deem illicit, means for that soul. To believe through a pure act of faith is sufficient to be saved, and I hope to be able to go on believing. But to believe by a loving conviction is a magnet which attracts one to the summit of heaven, And how can we preserve this when our love is literally crushed, incessantly crushed, as we gather it together? For it is our life, and we know we will die without it, by an inexorableness which to the lack of grace granted also joins the most complete abandonment. May 3rd. Marta is in Lucca for the Feast of the Holy Cross. Though sending her away means losing the only comfort I have round me, I have willingly sent her so that she will pray to the Holy Face for me, and take my offering. Oh, what an offering, which disgusts me! It is not money that I love to give to God, but since He no longer accepts anything from me, I must and can only give money, as the Pharisee Catholics are accustomed to do. I receive mail, words of comfort, and I get anxious. Paula says, I am no longer able to sleep, she who slept 10 or even 12 hours on end. I answer back, and I am not even able to rest any more without sleeping. I must of necessity go mad. I cannot put up with anything, people, things, flowers, animals, books. Everything leaves me either indifferent or even more agitated. I pray, but I am caught up by the fear that all my entreaties will turn into greater punishments. May the 4th. After a night of physical agony such as to provoke trembling in those able to preach, who knows how many of them or how much trembling, resignation and cheerfulness so well, when however they are not in the situation of those upon whom they lavish such preaching, I hear Mary's voice. I do not see her, I hear her, but the honey of paradise at once descends into me. Mary says, among brothers there may still occur moments of sternness, incomprehension, and the resulting tears. The older brother avails himself of his primogeniture in order to be demanding towards the younger ones, but a good mother is never rigid, uncomprehending, or deaf to the suffering of those born to her. Her heart as a mother breaks as much over the crying of her firstborn as over that of the last-born son. Her breast is a pillow for the flesh of her flesh, whether of the firstborn or the last to be born. Her hands join in entreaty on behalf of the son suffering from his brother's severity, nor does she resign herself if she does not see the older one calmed down and the younger one consoled. This happens in someone who is a mother of flesh and blood, but I am the mother. You were not born of me of flesh and blood, but of my spirit, joined to God in an eternal marriage, and of my pain. My child, you heard me say, I will be a wolf in order to defend the doctrine of my Son. This statement is to be found in the Poem of the Man God, Volume 5, page 697. But just as I, the Lord's ewe lamb, would become a wolf in regard to my Jesus' legacy, so as mother who defends her children, I am able to rise up in the defense of them against anything which may carry out an assault to slay a child of mine. I defend you, Maria. Do not weep. You are under my mantle. Close your eyes so as not to see either God's severity or men's ferocity. Do not speak. Do not move. You could not, poor child of mine, without increasing your pain, without increasing your resistance. You have been told to offer at least a little arid prayer, arid in accepting sacrifice. No, it would be useless hypocrisy, and would poison your soul more than events already have. I want even less. I only want you to abandon yourself to me. Sleep on my breast. You will be healed. Be silent. I will speak for you. Love me. I am your comfort. I am the mother of sorrow, and you are not very different from my Jesus when he was laid, dead, on my lap. But you will rise again, my child, because I want you to. May the 5th. Since yesterday I have been on Mary's lap, and how good I feel. It is not just a phrase. I really feel as though I am on her knees. She is holding me seated towards the left in such fashion that I am resting my right side on her heart, and my head on her shoulder. She is clasping me with her left arm, and from time to time says to me, Be at ease. Rest. Oh, I seem to have returned, but it's even sweeter, to those rare hours when Mother would take me onto her lap and make me so happy. My physical affliction is so great. Suffocation, emphysema, and cardiac insufficiency are constantly increasing. Tonight I have gone right to life's limit, with numerous extra systoles and a drop to a pulse of 46 beats a minute. I no longer breathed. I was in a cold sweat, real agony. But Mother had said to me, Be at ease, and I felt I was in her arms. I had cuddled up in the nest of her lap, arm, and mantle, and was not afraid even of death. After the atrocious agony of these last 25 days, a spiritual agony compared to which the physical one I am now undergoing is a mere trifle, my agonal suffering of the flesh is turning into a lark. Indeed, it is rendered blessed by the peace being poured into me by contact with Mary. No, my state is not, and cannot be a deception. Pain, yearning, and the wish for my house are still present. There is an atrocious recollection of what I have suffered. There is a perceptible, enduring sensation of abandonment by God. These things are still present, but I am on Mary's lap. I can withstand them. It is as if a heavenly anesthetic were attenuating moral sensitivity to pain in me, and injecting a sense of celestial euphoria. Blessed be you, Mary, my mother. You save me. Save me now, and in the hour of my death. Mother, hold me on your lap, and I will be safe until the end. May the 6th. I remain as if dying after communion, and hear Jesus moaning in his agony in Gethsemane. Unable to write, I remain this way, wanting and not wanting to transcribe those laments. I feel that for many they will seem like blasphemies, and they are so real. I remember the agony when I saw him on February the 11th. See the entry for that date in this volume. In Gethsemane, the words correspond to the expression of my Jesus, completely tortured in spirit, desperate. But who accepts this? May the 7th. To find peace, I decide to transcribe these words of agony, but Jesus says, "Let them be exclusively for you, for others would not understand them. Let them be a comfort for you, so you will not be afraid of being lost, as you think, on account of your desolate suffering, which makes you rave." May the 8th. I am more prostrate than in past days. I read and reread the weeping of Jesus so as to be able to tell myself, he understands me and pities me, and I draw close to Mary, for I receive comfort from nothing and no one on earth. May the 9th. In a quarter of an hour of sleep this morning, I dreamt of a disembarkation in a Tyrrhenian city, on a shore that was not rocky. I don't know which one it is, or whether it is a presage or a reflection of my agony. I woke up sadder than ever, convinced that I too was a twig in Satan's hands, as Jesus says. I imitate him in taking refuge in a heavenly direction, not in heaven, for heaven has been closed to me for a month. May the 10th. Yesterday I said a whole rosary and the sweet sequence of the joys and sorrows. I meditated on the 15 mysteries, in addition to daily prayers. I had 2 sopors instead of 1, constantly felt ill, and in the evening suffered another assault. By whom? I do not hesitate to say, by the devil. I seem to have gone back to the tremendous days extending from April 10th to May 3rd, which, beginning the day Our Lady spoke to me, May the 4th, changed into sad resignation, sometimes tinged with shades of joy. Since last night it's been hell again. But who can say to me in such a way that I can believe it, that I am not damned? And yet I pray, and yet I believe, and yet I love, but it is the most absolute abandonment by what I desire, God. And behind him, the persons from whom a word of God may still come to me remain absent. Even the words I have heard seem to me not to be true. Have mercy, Lord, for I feel I am going mad. I no longer see or understand anything. I feel only this agony. Just a month ago I happened to open books once to find a word that would illuminate me. Nothing. I seek comfort in prayer. Nothing. In things. Nothing. Who understands me? But why have I come here? I have the feeling that if I had gone elsewhere, where I wanted to, and not where I submitted to going. She had wanted to go to Camaiore rather than St. Andrea di Compito, as observed in note 312, and not where I submitted to going under a lot of pressure from those hoping for who knows what from this place, and for those whose aim in life is the well-being of the flesh. There is perhaps cause for gladness at being here. I get the feeling that if I were where I wanted to go, I would be less forlorn. My friend Gina, like a sister to me, has written, Gina Ferrari, her dear friend from school days, has written, I am moved by her goodness, but I also suffer on this account. If only I were at least close to this true Christian, and not in the midst of this frivolous company which does not understand me, as I do not understand it. If only I were with my sisters. But here, without anyone to lift me to heaven, and crushed as I am by the abandonment of God and the ferocity of Satan, I get lost. I feel it. I get lost in spirit and in flesh. I go crazy, and that's the least of it. The bad part is that I am destroying what I have done for my eternal future. Have mercy, Lord. Mary, have mercy. May the 11th. Jesus says, Come out of your jail for a while. Place your hand in mine. I want to take you with me. The heat of my wound will warm the cold in your hand, and will warm your heart more. Do you know how grafts are made? In two ways. One, radical, is when you want to turn a wild plant into a good plant. The foliage is then totally amputated, and on the poor remaining stumps, open, and, if plants had a voice, moaning with pain, the shoots to be grafted are inserted into the clefts. They are then bound, and you wait. The sap of the good tree mixes with that of the wild plant, and if in the latter there is a capacity for fusion and attraction, the beneficent sap becomes dominant and wins out. The tree becomes good and fruitful. There is, moreover, the perfection obtained by experts to make a new, very good super quality out of two good plants. Then the plant is not brutally amputated. There is no longer any need, because it is already good. The two good plants are merely drawn together. One or more branches are sheared off from the plant to be fecundated with this vegetable marriage, and against the trimmed sections, a wound which hurts and burns, but which will give glory to the tree, other branches from the fecundating plant are pressed very tightly, and are bound in such a way that the buds of the latter are joined to the former's wound, and the branches emerge from it which combine the virtues of the graft with the original virtues. Maria, baptism and the sacraments in general are a total graft inserting grace into the bad plant of man, stained by original sin, and maintaining it for successive grafts, for man as a plant has a nature which rejects the effects of grace, the divine graft. Not always, indeed rarely, my blood, my flesh, my martyrdom, and the paraclete fire can make you, that are wild, into plants with heavenly fruit. The will to become such is lacking in you, but in those who have this will, and that is the dominant note in their song of love, love practices another graft, and it is that of fusion with me. I then take their hand, and the scar on my hand, never completely healed, pours its warmth and its seeds into your being, and brands you with indelible fire. It is not necessary to be pollarded as with the first graft. Grace is already in you, but it is necessary to be lacerated by pain, my herald, so as to be able to receive beneficial contact with me with immediate vitality. And the larger the wound harming you is, the more room there is for me to rest my wounds thereupon. If you are one big wound, if from your head to your feet you are nothing but laceration and pain, then I clasp you to myself, and to every wound of mine there corresponds one of yours, and, as if by a spiritual transfusion, the blood passes from me, wounded, to you, wounded. The suffering is atrocious, I know, but the reaction is sublime. I am resting on you, Maria. You do not realize, you cannot realize, because you are dying of pain. From the 6th hour to the 9th hour, I did not even see my mother. I did not see even my mother. Pain made me able only to feel pain. Heaven, sun, crowd, and shouts and moans, and the whistling of the wind, everything was cancelled out in the atrocious pain of the final agony, of the redemption. I knew that my mother was at the foot of the cross, but more than the thicker and thicker darkness, pain hid her from me, the pain of one tortured, and the pain of one abandoned by God, and only I know how much I would have liked to see her, to find comfort in such desolation. But now I take your hand and say to you, come down from your cross, and accompany me, away from the darkness for a while. I want to speak to you about a point which someone dear to me and to you wished for, and I did not speak about this topic before, because I was reserving it for now. My Peter says, the devil, your adversary, is prowling around you like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Withstand him, strong in faith, knowing that your brothers and sisters scattered over the world, share the same sufferings you endure. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 to 9. In the African regions where the lions dwell, men and animals know how to orient themselves with respect to him. I once took you with me to the east, alongside a fount rich in water, and I said to you, be like this. On June 21st, 1943. See the notebooks, 1943. Today, I am taking you with me into the eternal forests, whose giant trees are the descendants of the ones emerging from nothing, by the will of the Father, and admired by the astonished eyes of your first parents. You will thus see something different from what is making you gloomy. Look, the peaks of these millenary giant green plants Look, the peaks of these millenary green giants stand tall against the sky, a darker blue than my own eyes, and they interweave up above to speak to the winds and the stars about the events below which they do not see, for the green roof conceals them. Beneath is the undergrowth, as thick as an intricate labyrinth, with lianas and roots that look like serpents, and adorned with deceitful necklaces which are snakes lying in ambush. Even further down is the thick plush grass, emerging on virgin land, rich in 1,000 juices, where it is sweet for antelopes and gazelles to find pasture and rest, and for millions of birds of every kind of song and color to find food. Flowers, ferns, necklaces of corollas, green caverns, moss-covered grottos, and fresh currents of water, and a green light, resting in the midst of the sun, which dazzles wherever it penetrates, on roads opened up by human exertion, or along a watery mirror, so vast that it forces the vegetable dome to open out into a green well. In these forests the lion is the king. No one else stands up to him among those running, or leaping, or crawling, or climbing, or flying, or walking. Man, passing by with his herds on the fringes of the forest, migrating towards areas where there is a pasture or a market, constructs fences with sharp points for himself and his fellows to protect the herd on cold, peaceful nights. The animals hole up in the brush or huddle at the top of plants as night falls to flee from his assault, for the lion does not attack as long as the sun is in the sky. He waits for the night, the deceitful shadow of the moon, or deep darkness, to go after his prey. He goes out and roars as the night comes on. He roars around man's enclosures and the caverns of animals. He does not penetrate. He waits. He waits for the imprudent one who comes out of his refuge. There's always so much imprudence. The desire for relief, being curious to see, being in a hurry to arrive. The lion is there. He waits, tasting his prey in advance, beating his sides out of impatience and wrath over the long wait, and circles around, seeking the point where the imprudent one will come out, and where he finds him. And when he finds him, he is on the lookout, or studies the signs of his habitual movement, and lies in ambush. And he is now silent, for he knows that the imprudent one is coming. He is silent to leave the impression that he is no longer there, and he is never there so much as when he is silent. Maria, the devil acts like the lion. Taking advantage of nightfall, he circles around your souls. He does not dare to come out and attack as long as the sun is high over your spirit. He roars, but does not attack. And what does it matter if he roars? Let him roar with rage. Remain in the sun, your God, and do not be afraid. Do you no longer see the sun? But he is there. If an hour of trial makes you blind, be able to feel him from his warmth, since you cannot see his appearance. Don't you know that you would die of cold if your son were dead for you? If your spirit lives, though God has made it blind, it is because the sun is still kissing it. Oh, if souls were able to always remain under the eternal sun, and, even in the darkness of trials, not emerge from the solar zenith and say, I will stay in my place. God will find me here, where he left me, for I do not change my way of thinking as regards faith and love. The devil goes around looking for an aperture to stretch out his claws and tear away the incautious one who is too close to the opening, to temptation. Or he waits for him to come out as a voluntary prey through the allurement of sensuality, or he may be silent and lie in ambush. This is the craftiest trick, and those proceeding without a connection to the divine fall into his trap. I repeat, as long as he roars, he is not very dangerous. When, after letting himself be heard, he is silent, he is then dangerous to the utmost. He is silent because he has discovered your weak point and your habits, and is already prepared to leap upon you. Be watchful. If the light of God is upon you, it illuminates you, and nothing else is needed. But if you are in darkness, remain anchored in faith. Let nothing move you from it, for any reason. Does everything seem dead and nullified? Tell yourselves, no, everything is as before. Say to Satan, no, everything is as before. Before you, how many have endured the same tortures as you? Your brothers and sisters scattered over the world, your brothers and sisters around the world. World here is not so much this earth, which you inhabit, with those living on it. World is the communion of all the living. Of all the living, I say, that is, of all those who are in eternal life, after having been willing and able to remain in life while they were on earth. Well then, these brothers and sisters of yours, scattered like eternal flowers in my celestial gardens, not only remember their past combats, and thus are able to understand yours, but because of the charity which is now their life, they suffer in blessedness on seeing you suffer, a suffering of love which does not dull their joy, but mixes it into a vein of superactive charity, and makes them merciful and helpful in regard to your troubles. All of heaven reaches out to you, that struggle with my name in your hearts, and for the sake of my name, and helps you. Do not go outside the threefold barrier of the theological virtues, and the secure defense of the fourfold cardinal virtues: faith, hope, and charity, justice, temperance, fortitude, and prudence. This is your defense. Satan's claws break against them, and he loses his power, not harming you. When the sun, your God, returns to shine on your spirits, victorious over the night which tortured you, you remain astonished on seeing what a labor of liberation the devil himself has carried out, against his own will, by circling furiously around you. In his impotent fury, by placing you on the defensive, he made small imperfections like tenuous blades of grass stepped on excessively, die definitively, and the light descend triumphantly onto the bare ground, to make your flower, your spirit, created to live in heaven, grow more vigorously. Go in peace. Go back in peace onto your cross and into your darkness. This refers to the terrible state of abandonment which the writer had been experiencing since April 9th. And take this memory of sunlight with you. Go, believe in me and in my mother, even if in these hours which are between the 6th and the 9th one you cannot see us because pain blinds you.